unqualified to be married to somebody as exalted as Rukmini. And after doing this description, he says, now you should find somebody else to marry. I'm not fit for you. And because she's completely dedicated her whole life to Krishna, this is like completely unthinkable for her, and she's like completely devastated, and she falls to the ground unconscious. And then Krishna understands that she didn't really take it as a joke, and tries to pacify her and explains actually it was meant to be a joke. And then she cheers up, and all the negative things that he said about himself, she interprets in a positive way as glorifications of Krishna. And she makes many, many beautiful statements of glorifying Krishna for his different transcendental qualities. And we're coming toward the end of that section. So I wanted to review it. And once upon a time, about 15 years ago, I wrote a poem on this chapter of the Krishna book. And I summarized the pastime. Actually, the ashram girls did it as a drama. Krishna was a narrator, Amrita was Rukmini, and Krishna Priya was Krishna, and they did it here. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I do. Because I was told this should be interactive, I was thinking you can listen attentively while I read these different descriptions by Rukmini Devi, and if anyone sticks in your mind any quality of Krishna that she mentions, you might remember that, and we can ask people what their favorite glorification of Krishna by Rukmini is after this brief narration of these beginning of this chapter, which is just 3.5 minutes, so don't worry, it's not going to go on and on. My dear lotus-eyed Krishna, you're right, I'm no fit match for you. Master of all good qualities, you do what no other can do. Fearing the kings ruling this world, you say that you hid in the sea. Here the modes of nature are kings, but as super soul you are free. You say you hate these worldly kings, but what are the kings of these lands? I think in truth the senses are kings, and yet you can curb their demands. You say you've no worldly power, and your servants have none as well. That is a sign of your wisdom, for worldly might leads one to hell. You say you live without purpose, and your servants are aimless too. People think you're mysterious, yet all opulence rests in you. You say that you're impoverished, but what is that poor condition? Since you yourself are everything, you have no other possession. You say rich men don't care for you, and I certainly must agree. Due to planning for sense pleasure, their spiritual urges flee. But those having no possessions are exclusively dear to you, and for those renounced devotees, your lordship is the most dear too. You say partners in a marriage should have many traits the same, but you're the source of opulence, like beauty, wisdom, wealth, and fame. Those persons who have good motives desire nothing other than you. Thus they give up everything and become worthy to meet you too. In your servant's society, the pale pleasures of lust aren't missed. For when you are in the center, does real happiness exist? You say that only beggars praise you, but exalted beggars they are. Forgiving the worst offenders, they glorify you near and far. My dear beloved husband, in choosing you, I'm not naive. I accepted your lotus feet, following these saints whom I believe. You claim that you are penniless, and I can see how that is true. You give yourself in charity to those who give themselves to you. Controlled by your feature of time, all beings are born and then die. Compared to your mighty power, any prince is hardly a fly. You say you hid in the ocean out of fear of these rulers of men, and yet you bravely kidnapped me and taught those princes a lesson. My Lord, how is that you say your surrendered souls are sad? Giving up false pleasures for you, your servants are certainly glad. According to past fruitive acts, you can throw me in any species. I just want attachment for you, who give yourself to devotees. You ask me to choose another prince, but what is their real position? Dishonored dogs, miserly cats, hard-working beasts of burden. Women who don't know your glories may choose one of those other men, yet I desire you alone, who are praised from here to heaven. A man in this world of matter is a bag of mucus and stool. A woman who loves such a man is certainly an outright fool. That's my translation of today's verse, which is described in much more detail. O Lord, you are self-satisfied and indifferent to beauty too. Whether you care for me or not, I just want devotion for you. Passion's mode is your creation. Thus your glance in a passionate way fulfills all my heart's ambitions. For such auspicious times I pray. So after Rukmini glorified Krishna so nicely, he says many words of accepting her glorifications and glorifying her for her pure service. Was anyone attracted by any of those things Rukmini said about Krishna? Yes? Right. Yeah, that was my favorite too. Yes? You have one? You can say. Yeah, huh? What are these Shishupal, all these guys? They're completely insignificant compared to Krishna. Thank you. Anybody else have one? I was gonna let people say 3 before I move on. Any more? We had 1 man and 1 kid. Any ladies want to say anything? Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, these kings, their power was insignificant. Actually, they were very proud of their power, but but it was actually insignificant. So, we will continue chanting the verse for today. I know some of you love to chant the Sanskrit like I do. This one is in the Brahma Samhita verse, or meter rather, so just so you can get a feel for it. Tvakshma suromanaka kesu penadamantar Mangshasti rakta krimi vita kapapita. Mamshasti rakta krimi vit kapavita batam. Jivakshavam bhajati kantamatir vimudha. Yate padabja makarandam adigatistri. Aksma suromanaka kesha pinadamantar. Mamsasti lakta krimi vitkapapita vatam. Jivatsavam bhajati kantamati vimudha. Yate padabdam akarandam adigatistri. Aksma suromanaka kesha pinadamantar. Angshasti rakta krimi vit kapapita vatam. Jivachavam bhajati kantam atir vimudha. Yate padabdam andakarandam ajigrati Please chant. Any of the ladies want to chat? Any of the kids want to chat? Thank you all for chanting. We don't always explain, but Prabhupada wanted the verse chanted many times so we'd have the chance of remembering it. So that was why many people have the chance to chant the verse every morning, so we have the chance to remember. We'll go through the words. Tvak, with skin. Smashru, whiskers. Roma, bodily hair. Naka, nails. Kesha, and hair on the head. Pinadham, covered. Antaha, inside. Mangsha, flesh. Asti, bones. Lakta, blood. Krimi, worms. Vit, stool. Kapha, mucus. Pitta, bile. Vatam, and air. Jivat, living. Svasam, a corpse. Bhajati, worships. Kanta, as husband or lover. Matihi, whose idea. Vimudha, totally bewildered. Ya, who. Te, your. Pada abja, of the lotus feet. Mankarandam, the honey. Ajigrati, not smelling. Stri, woman. Translation by the servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. A woman who fails to relish, this is Rukmini talking about Krishna, a woman who fails to relish the fragrance of the honey of your lotus feet becomes totally befooled, and thus she accepts as her husband or lover a living corpse covered with skin, whiskers, nails, head hair and body hair, and filled with flesh, bones, blood, parasites, feces, mucus, bile, and air. So for people in the rasa of ghastliness, there's a great opportunity to relish this verse. What's interesting is this verse is composed by, translated by Gopi Pranadana Prabhu and Hridayananda Goswami, but Prabhupada himself gave 2 translations of this verse, which I thought we should read as we're his loyal followers, trying to be anyway. He, in the Krishna book, of course, which is a summary study of the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, he translated it this way. A man within this material world is just like a dead body. In fact, superficially, the living entity is covered by this body, which is nothing but a bag of skin, decorated with beards and mustaches, hairs on the body, nails on the fingers, and hairs on the head. Within this decorated bag, there are bunches of muscle, bundles of bones, pools of blood. All is mixed up with stool, urine, mucus, bile, and polluted air, and enjoyed by different kinds of insects and germs. A foolish woman accepts such a dead body as her husband, and in sheer misunderstanding, loves him as her dear companion. This is only possible because such a woman has never tasted the ever-blissful flavor of your lotus feet. So, because this is such a ghastly translation, and or verse, and it appears amidst this beautiful pastime of romantic love between Rukmini and Krishna. Some people might say that, well, it's out of place. This is rasa bas. It's mixing up this beautiful romantic affair with this ghastliness. So that question comes up in the Nectar of Devotion, and the verse is again translated by Prabhupada in a different way. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 60th verse, 60th chapter, 45th verse, Rukmini Devi said, "My dear husband, a woman who has no taste for the transcendental pleasure available from your personal contact must be inclined to accept as her husband somebody who is externally a combination of mustache, beard, body hairs, fingernails, and some head hair. And within him there are muscles, bones, blood, intestinal worms, stools, mucus, bile, and similar things. Actually, such a husband is only a dead body. But due to not being attracted to your transcendental form, a woman will have to accept this combination of stools and urine as her husband." This statement, which lists the ingredients of the material body, is not a perverted mellow in transcendental realization, because it shows correct discrimination between matter and spirit. Active devotion key. And so, now that we've heard 3 translations of the verse, we can get to the purport. And this purport, Prabhupada and his followers, they would translate the Bhagavatam and comment on it based on a book they had with many, many translations of different previous commentators, and they would select different things from these different ones and put their own realizations in. And this particular one comes 100% from Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, and if you look at his book, Sarta Darshani, I believe it's called, Sarartha Darshani, basically the essence of value, you'll see it's practically just what they have in this purport. So we shall read that, which is here in front of us. Purport. Here, Lord Krishna's chaste wife makes quite unequivocal statement about material sense gratification based on the physical body. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows on this verse. On the authority of the statement, Savai Pati Syad Akota Bayam Svayam, he indeed should become one's husband who can relieve all fear. Sri Krishna is the real husband for all women at all times. Thus, a woman who worships someone else as her husband simply worships a dead body. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments further, Rukmini thus considered that although the sweetness of Lord Krishna's lotus feet is well known, and although he possesses an eternal body full of knowledge and bliss, foolish women reject him. An ordinary husband's body is covered on the outside by skin and hair, otherwise being filled with blood, feces, flesh, bile, and so on. It would be overwhelmed with flies and other vermin attracted by its bad smell and other offensive qualities. The idea is that because it's covered by skin and hair, it's not actually attracted by vermin interested in its bad smell and other offensive qualities. Anyway, those who have no practical experience of the beauty and purity of Krishna, or Krishna consciousness, may be confused by such uncompromising denunciation of material sense gratification. But those who are enlightened by Krishna consciousness will be enlivened and enthused by such absolutely truthful statements. Sounds like the ecstasy of Hridayananda Goswami. So, basically there's there's different rasas that we can have with Krishna, and they're reflected in this world pervertedly. So Rukmini is situated in the conjugal love of Krishna, and she's protesting against people who settle for the mundane conjugal rasa. But just as very few people actually listen to Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita to abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto him. Very few women actually listen to Rukmini's statement to accept only Krishna as their husband. And practically in the history of the world, we can't think of very many people who thought of, I'm only going to marry Krishna and nobody else. But there are a few cases, and there's a very beautiful story of one lady in South India who decided that she didn't want to marry anybody else, she only wanted to marry Krishna. And so because it's a nice story, I heard Radhanath Swami, I think it was Radhanath Swami tell it in class one time. It's from the Sri Sampradaya. Srila Prabhupada, he actually did quote, there's 12 great saints in the Sri Sampradaya called the Alvars. And Prabhupada on occasion would quote from them, particularly he quoted from Kulakshetra Maharaj, who talked about how he wanted at the time he left his body, he wanted the lotus of his mind to swim in the swan of his mind to swim in the lotus feet of Krishna, like that. Basically, it was like a poetic construction. And Prabhupada accepted that. And there's a lot of devotion in these different alvars. So one of them was a lady, and there's this brief account of her life where she decided that she wanted to marry only Krishna. And it's a beautiful story, and people like stories, so here goes. Does anybody know the story of Andal? Andal. So Andal. So you'll hear this beautiful story. A devout Brahmin named Vishnu Chitra lived in Villa Puttur, a town near Madurai, which is in Tamil Nadu, South India. His daily duties included procuring flowers for the worship of the Lord at the local temple. One morning, as he went about his business, he discovered a baby girl lying underneath a tulsi plant in his flower garden. Having no family of his own, Vishnu Chitta felt it was God's grace that gave him this child, and he named her Godai, or gift of Mother Earth. Filled with joy, he took her to his home and raised her as his own. Godai grew up in an atmosphere of love and devotion. Vishnu Chitta doted on her in every respect, singing songs about his beloved Krishna, teaching her all the stories and philosophy he knew, and sharing with her his love of Tamil poetry. The love that Vishnu Chitta had for his beloved Lord intensified further in his daughter, and before long she was passionately in love with Lord Krishna. Even as a child, Godai made up her mind to marry none other but the Lord of Vrindavan, and she refused to think of any human being in similar terms. She imagined what it would be like to be his bride, playing the role of his beloved, enjoying his presence. Unknown to her father, she adorned herself daily with the flower garland he prepared for the Lord at the temple. After admiring her reflection, thinking of herself as his ideal bride, she would put the garland back for her father to take to the temple and offer to the Lord. So that's a little irregular. Usually we don't enjoy offerings before Krishna does. But she had a different spontaneous mood. One day, Vishnu Chitta noticed a strand of Godai's hair on one of the garlands. Shocked and saddened by this desecration of what was meant only for the Lord, he scolded Godai for a misuse of the garland and discarded it. He carefully prepared a new one and offered it to the Lord, begging pardon all the while. That night the Lord appeared to Vishnu Chitta in his dream and asked him why he discarded Godai's garland instead of offering it to him. He told Vishnu Chitta that he missed the scent of Godai's body in the flowers, and he preferred them that way. Would he please continue to give the garlands worn by Godai? Overcome with emotion, Vishnu Chitta awoke and cried tears of both joy and remorse. It dawned on him that his daughter was someone whose love of God was so intense and pure that even he had not comprehended its extent. Her spiritual greatness was such that the Lord himself wished to share her presence. From that day on, she became known as Andal, the girl who ruled over the Lord. Andal blossomed into a beautiful young woman as she came of marriageable age. When asked to marry, however, she stubbornly refused, saying that she would only agree to marry Sri Ranganath, the Lord at the great temple in the town of Srirangam. Vishnu Chitta despaired, wondering what was to become of his daughter. One night, Lord Ranganath appeared in his dream and asked that Andal be sent to him in all her wedding finery. Simultaneously, the Lord appeared before the priests at Srirangam and asked them to prepare for the coming of Andal. Vishnu Chitta once again was filled with both joy and sadness. Joy that his beloved daughter would attain her goal, but sadness at losing her at the same time. He made all the wedding preparations and arranged for Andal's journey in a palanquin to Srirangam. Andal waited with excited anticipation as the wedding party approached Lord Ranganath's shrine. As they entered the temple, she jumped out of the palanquin. Unable to restrain herself any longer, running into the temple sanctum, she embraced Lord Ranganath and disappeared in a blaze of glory, having joined her Lord. She was only 15 at that time. Andal is now one of the best-loved poet saints of the Tamils. A pious tradition reckons her to be the veritable descent of Bhumi Devi, Mother Earth, in Pali form, to show humanity the way to his lotus feet. She is present in all Sri temples in India and elsewhere next to her Lord, as she always desired. So this is like an amazing story, but it shows that actually is that it's a real possibility, and that actually Krishna, you can see how Krishna reciprocated her love, very much like he did with Rukmini, actually. Like Rukmini wrote him that letter, and Krishna said, I can't sleep at night because I'm always thinking of you, because she was always thinking of him. So Krishna is very reciprocal, and if anybody actually did follow Rukmini's instruction, as that lady Andal did, they would see that Krishna reciprocates. But that's a very high level of devotion that's rarely attained. Now, I had a few other things to say. I wanted to tell that story early on because I heard the kids had to leave. I guess half the kids got to hear it anyway. So because we actually don't really believe that we could have such a relationship with Krishna, we settle for having relationships with the people in this world. And although they're not as satisfying. There's a story actually in Nectar of Devotion about a girl who also had that attitude of wanting to marry Krishna. And this is from chapter 19. In the Padma Purana, there's a statement about ecstatic love born of spontaneous affection. Chandrakanti, a celebrated fair-faced girl, rigidly observed celibacy in order to attain Krishna as her husband. She engaged herself in meditating on the transcendental form of the Lord and always chanted the glories of the Lord. She did not desire to accept anyone else as her husband. She firmly decided that only Lord Krishna would be her husband. And then there's also a case in North India of Mirabai, who's celebrated. She's more famous, actually, at least in North India, as wanting to only marry Krishna. She actually did marry someone else, but she didn't have an intimate relationship with him because she felt that Krishna only was her husband. And that person died after 5 years. And she wrote many poems, as did Andal, about Krishna. So how did Rukmini attain this exalted state of wanting to love Krishna? Is one thing that's addressed actually by Srila Prabhupada, and actually in her own words, how she became so enthusiastic about Krishna. She wrote this letter to Krishna expressing her devotion, and in there she describes how she became so enthusiastic as to wanting to marry Krishna. My dear Krishna, O infallible and most beautiful one, any human being who happens to hear about your transcendental form and pastimes immediately absorbs through his ears your name, fame, and qualities, and thus all his material pangs subside, and he fixes your form in his heart. Through such transcendental love for you, he sees you all as within himself, and by this process, all his desires become fulfilled. Similarly, I have heard of your transcendental qualities. I may be shameless in expressing myself so directly, but you have captivated me and taken my heart. So Narada Muni would regularly visit the palaces of Krishna, and he would narrate the glories of Krishna, and he would narrate. He was, always fixed in glorifying Krishna, and from his visit, I guess to her father's palace, King Bhishmaka, she was able to hear about the glories of Krishna, and because of that, she became absorbed in thought of him. And then how is it that she was able to attain that? Even if one thinks of marrying Krishna, how does one actually get to that level? I mean, one can dream up so many things, but that don't come to pass. It's described, Prabhupada writes, Rukmini knew very well that obtaining the favor of Krishna was not an easy job. Even Lord Shiva must purify him for this himself for this purpose. Surely it would be difficult for Rukmini, who was only the daughter of a Kshatriya king. She desired to dedicate her life to observing severe austerities and penances, such as fasting and going without bodily comforts. If it was not possible in this lifetime to attain Krishna's favor by these activities, she was prepared to do the same lifetime after lifetime. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the pure devotees of the Lord execute devotional service with great determination. Such determination, as exhibited by Rukmini Devi, is the only price for purchasing Krishna's favor, and is the ultimate way to attain success in Krishna consciousness. So by this verse, Rukmini teaches us different things. That she reminds us that beauty is only skin deep. Actually, is that phrase in English? Beauty is only skin deep, and that Krishna is the. Actually, we seek out people to give us protection and shelter in this world, but only Krishna can give us infallible shelter. And therefore she advises taking shelter of him. And that she reminds people of the existence of the spiritual conjugal rasa, that there exists love, romantic love for God, which is something that's very not commonly known, and she advises that people endeavor in that way. So, of course, in our situation in this world is we have intimate relationships with people whose bodies are composed of blood and guts, and our own body is composed, although we don't like to think about it, such embarrassing substances. But we are not our body, and they are not their body. And the relationships we have in this world can be engaged in devotional service by using them to awaken our love for Krishna. And that's the best thing we can do with them. And in the context of the mundane conjugal rasa in this world, the husband serves the wife in different ways, and the wife serves the husband in different ways. And those activities of service can be done as offerings to Krishna. And because everything actually is meant to be done as an offering of Krishna. Yat karoshi yat astasi, yat charosi dadasi, yat tapasasi konjaya, karusva mad arpanam, whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you give away in charity, whatever austerities you perform should be done for me. And and especially when we have relationships with devotees, the devotees remind us of Krishna, which is the beauty of having relationships with devotees. I was at a program with the devotees from Krishna House last night, and Shamala Kishore asked the question, say something that has inspired you today in devotional service. And people said all kinds of different things, but because they're all devotees, they all had some genuine realizations, and we were inspired by those realizations. So, if one is not fortunate enough to marry Krishna, the next best thing is to marry a devotee of Krishna, who will remind one of Krishna, and through whose service, serving with, we can advance our love for Krishna. Does anybody have any questions or comments or about this? I saw I went on and on. I did want to tell those stories. I thought it was such a good story. I mean, if you want your own copy, you go to look up Andal on ramanuja.org, Andal. It's one of the better love stories in existence. Yes, Chivikam?
I had written a little poem about Rukmini also.
Really? Wow, I got competition.
Maybe I may be able to remember part of it, so I'll say it, and then I have a little question. Maybe let me say the question first before. The human feature is godlike in appearance, in the sense that they have the features of the Supreme, or the gods. Both the male and the female, God and goddesses.
Right.
And I guess the feature is, in one sense, to try to imitate the Supreme, in one way. And then, of course, so I wanted you to maybe comment on that a little bit. But before that, let me just see if I could remember the poem a little bit.
You're welcome to send it to me later. I'd like to read it.
Alas, alas, that goddess, born from the quest for the elixir of immortality, that most radiant, exquisite, and unmatchable beauty, who elude both the gods and the demons, that giver of good fortune to all, is now contemplating her own seemingly misfortune. Will she be rejected by the self-satisfied Lord, or will she be left in isolation by him? So this was a part that I had written when I was doing the Bhagavatam class on Rukmini.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to comment on the godlike?
Well, it's described that basically we come into this world because we want to imitate Krishna as the enjoyer. So we can't do that in the spiritual world. So we're given these virtual bodies to try and enjoy with, and we play roles as men and women, but we're actually souls that are distinct. And so basically, it's described that the rasa in this world is a perverted reflection. So the ultimate joy that we get from the relationship isn't to be found in its perverted manifestation, but in its pure form with Krishna. And we're actually meant to become frustrated with the perverted rasa, the imitation relationships, and become attracted to the eternal relationship. And we can use these, but the beauty of it, Krishna consciousness, is we can use the relationships we have in this world to cultivate our devotional service to Krishna, and we can proceed as friends or as spouses to advance toward Krishna. This usually because the scriptures are written for men, usually the allurement of the material form of the lady is what's being mentioned. Here it's the other way around because Rukmini is speaking. And Prabhupada talks about that we cultivate beauty, the attraction for the beauty of the divine couple, Radha and Krishna, and we dovetail our attraction to beauty in that way. And thereby we become free from victimization by the imitation beauty of this world. And that's, then in that context, Param Drishtava Nivartate, we attain a satisfaction by worshiping the divine beauties of Radha and Krishna, and we forget about the imitation beauty of this world. And it's certainly a reality. The more we do it, and it's experiential. Actually, sometimes I would have difficulty sleeping because my mind was filled with lusty thoughts, and I would just close my eyes and I would visualize the form of Krishna and his lotus feet and his yellow dhoti and the way he holds the flute attractively and his beautiful blackish waving hair and his eyes, and then by meditating on the form of Krishna, actually the lusty desires in my heart would diminish. And I tried other things like chanting or reading and stuff, but nothing that really was so powerful as just meditating on the form of Krishna. Because actually the form of Krishna is attracted to the mind, attracted to the soul, attracted to the pure mind, in a very deep way. Yes?
A couple questions. In that Ando pastime, is there any reference to her role in Krishna's pastimes, or oftentimes that's there?
Yeah, well, in some of her poetry, she talked about herself like being a cowherd girl of Vrindavan. There's give it little pieces of her poetry in the internet, and that was part of her mood of actually, if I can just, I think I kept that web page open on my browser. There's just a little paragraph about that. Let's see, that was here. Her first work is called the Tiru Pavai, a collection of 30 verses in which Andal imagines herself to be a gopi, one of the cowherd girls known for their unconditional devotion to Krishna. In these verses, she described her yearning to serve Lord Vishnu and achieve happiness, not just in this life, but for all eternity. She also describes the religious vows that she and her fellow cowherd girls will observe for that purpose. So that's an indication that she had that idea was part of her existence. I don't know if that was her eternal rasa, but that was something that was on her mind anyway. Yeah.
Another question. There might be, this is a little off the wall perhaps, but I'm going to say it. Anyway, this is occurring to me. You know, there's this verse from the Padma Purana, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samacharam. The Vedas recommend worship of the demigods. However, above the worship of the demigods is the worship of Lord Vishnu, and this is what really should be done. But even greater than that is the worship of the devotees related to Lord Vishnu.
Right.
So it strikes me that, like a chaste wife, if she has this service attitude towards her husband, it's a very high platform. You know, if her husband's a genuine Vaishnava.
Right. Well, that's sort of basically is that whole Leela of King Puranjana, right, who comes back as a lady whose husband is a great saint, and she serves him very faithfully. And Prabhupada uses that faithful relationship as analogous to the guru-disciple relationship, basically. So it's like if your husband is a pure devotee, and he's like your guru, your link to Krishna, and by pleasing his senses, you're pleasing Krishna's senses, like that. So it's
so you could reference Bhajano Thakur's Manasa Deho Geho Yoki Chamor. You know, that this is actually it's the highest platform of renunciation, utilizing everything in Krishna's service.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, there's like, basically there's 4 different ashrams, because there's 4 different, there's different kinds of mentalities, and Krishna creates the 4 ashrams to accommodate different people. So grihasthas are really excited about that idea, and the brahmacharis don't care for it. So, do any of the ladies want to say anything before they leave? Yes.
I mean, I had a question, but I kind of, you cleared in the end, but I was going to ask you, even though you're a brahmachari, I thought maybe you have some advice for us foolish, ill-fated women who decided to marry even after hearing about Krishna. Even after hearing about Krishna, a man with, stool, mucus, bile, whatever else, so, but you kind of said in the end, so.
Yeah, kind of, that's because he's a great devotee, I serve him with great affection, like he's your Guru Pati, and
Yes.
And no doubt you're very fortunate. I wish I was so fortunate to render as much service to Shesha Prabhu as you do. You're more advanced than me. Yes, Mataji?
I was going to say that in the Catholic religion, when a nun takes her vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, oftentimes they take their vows in a wedding dress.
Wow.
And they receive a ring. And this Vergatmika's sister apparently was a nun, and they did this up until the 60s. They might still be doing that.
Wow.
And then after they take their vows, they accept Jesus Christ as their husband. And after they take their vows, they change into their habit. And from that point on, live a very renounced life, but with Jesus being their husband.
Wow. Thank you. Yes, Chaitanya? He's bringing the microphone.
Thanks for the nice class. I was going to say that was a nice meditation you do for if you were feeling some agitation or lusty desires to, seeing Krishna's form. That's a That's like the Bhagavad Gita. By experiencing a higher taste, one can give up the lower taste. So that's nice.
Yeah, it's actually a bona fide meditation. We don't really, usually we chant or we read, but actually it's actually powerful.
Yeah.
And then I got sort of in the habit of always thinking about Krishna's form before I would go to sleep, so I just do it in the ordinary course of events, you know. And then if I die in my sleep, the last thing I was thinking about was Krishna, so I'm in a really good position. Okay, thank you for your time and tolerance. It's so nice to be here in Alachua and to witness how nicely you take care of their lordships. And here it's one of my favorite temples, by your donations and by your service in different ways. It's a very wonderful devotional atmosphere here. So thank you. Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Whenever I see you, I always see all those years, coming to the temple, you'd always be there. You'd be bringing out the Tulsi